My name is Keetha. I am your presenter for today. I'm going to give it a couple of seconds for folks to sign in. And let me very quickly show you who I am. All right, so I'm not going to have my video up the whole time for this webinar just to save people the bandwidth and make sure that the sound moves properly. But I just wanted to introduce myself. My name is Keetha Mercer. I work at the Canadian Women's Foundation and I'm the manager in charge of the Teen Healthy Relationships grants. I've been at the foundation for 5 years at our office in Toronto. I also wanted to introduce a couple of my colleagues who probably don't have webcams, but just so that you know, so on the line is Jackie Hall, who is a manager here at the foundation as well of our grant streams, and Rivka Kalalea, who is our grants administrator. So if you've sent any emails to our webinar or Teen Healthy Relationships email addresses, you may have heard back from Rivka. Rivka is your person for any tech-related issues and anything about charitable numbers. And Jackie, you'll be hearing more of for our other grants areas. So while folks get signed in, I also wanted to do a little quick tour of our webinar platform so that you know how to use it. So you will see a chat box or a questions box. So if you put questions into that, either Jackie or Rivka will respond to them in the moment, and we'll have time at the end for a Q&A where either they will read out your questions or give you a chance to ask your questions out loud, and so we can talk about your proposals and anything else that you have interest in. I will be going through the general guidelines and how to do an application and what we're looking for, and then I do recommend you ask questions out loud just because I'm sure other people have them. So don't hold back. You are muted automatically when you join. So just because there's so many people and to save our background noise. So if you push the raise hand button, so it literally is a little hand like this with an arrow, either Jackie or Rivka will unmute you so you can ask out loud. So I'll give you a chance to figure out if you have mics and if you want to use them. And if not, you can definitely put them in the questions box and we'll read them out loud for you. All right. So Jackie and Rivka, I know you don't have webcams, but if you want to say a quick hi, please feel free while I get my screen sharing.
I do have a webcam. So hello, everybody.
Jackie, no sound.
No sound.
All right, you can see Jackie's face at the very least. All right, Riff, do you want to say
hello? You can't see my face, but you can hear me.
All right, can't hear you either, Riff.
Oh.
All right, well, let's hope that you can hear me. All right, so we'll turn off our webcam so that this moves, so that the sound isn't held up, and get started. So this is a webinar for the Teen Healthy Relationships grants for 2020-2024. And we'll be hosting another webinar on Tuesday, October 15th at the same time. If you want to look in the handout section, I've uploaded our grant guidelines and instructions in both English and French, but you can also find that on our website at canadianwomen.org under grants, Teen Healthy Relationships. So let's get started. Whoops. So the purpose of the Teen Healthy Relationship grants is it's the Canadian Women's Foundation, part of the Canadian Women's Foundation overall strategy on gender-based violence. And this is our primary area of work on violence prevention. We have 2 other granting areas that work on gender-based violence. So our anti-trafficking grants, which are 8 multi-year grants over 5 years to programs working to end sex trafficking. And we you may have already gotten an email from us, but we are launching a brand new pilot 3-year grant this November called Rebuilding Lives, and that's to work with women and their children who've experienced violence. And if you're interested in that, Jackie, who's on this line, is managing that. For those of you that are also, or who are familiar with our annual violence prevention grants, I just wanted to flag for you that those grants are changing. We're opening them up across all of our areas. So violence prevention programs and teen healthy relationship programs will still be eligible under those grants, under that granting area, but the criteria will look really different. So stay tuned for that. So overall, the teen healthy relationship grants are to focus on teens 10 to 19, and this is inclusive of all gender expressions. This is the only area at the Canadian Women's Foundation where we work with cis, or with men and boys. And we are looking for programs that consider and design their programs with the understanding that gender is a spectrum and are not strictly limited to boy or girl. So we know that young people who identify as trans, genderqueer, non-binary, two-spirited, etc., really struggle overall with violence and healthy relationships. And also we have evidence to say that they are not necessarily engaging deeply in these types of programming. So we are looking for programs that are considerate of that. These are also programs that are meant to be focusing on all the relationships in young people's lives. So these are not meant to be focused specifically on dating or intimate relationships. If your program is working on inclusive of friends and peers, family, community, land, school, or systemic issues, we would also expect that to be a part of the program. And we are looking also for programs that are addressing the intersections of violence and including the root causes to inequity, because violence doesn't look the same in everybody's lives. We are expecting programs to be aware of that and designing based on that. So these are the Teen Healthy Relationships grants for this upcoming cycle. We're expecting to fund approximately 12 grants, up to $40,000 each per year over 4 years. And there's 3 areas. So there's the Teen Healthy Relationships full programs that are available up to $40,000 a year each. There's developmental programs, so these would be for organizations that are interested in researching and developing teen healthy relationships programming, but don't currently have a full program to run. And so these grants are up to $20,000 per year each. And then new for the teen healthy relationships area, we're also interested in national or regional networks working on building and strengthening the field of teen healthy relationships. So that is also $40,000 per year each. I'll go a little bit into the timeline and process in a few minutes, but just so you know, these grants will be awarded in August 2020 for programs starting in September 2020 and running until August 2024. So the 3 categories of grants that we're accepting under this, under the Teen Healthy Relationships Granting Program include, as I said, Teen Healthy Relationships Programs, Developmental Programs, and National or Regional Networks. So the Teen Healthy Relationships Programs, this is a little bit of the criteria that we will be looking for. This PowerPoint and webinar recording will be shared after the fact, but also most of this information is available in the grants guidelines on our website. But just to quickly go through, we are looking for programs that are focusing on gender-based violence and healthy relationships. So because of that, gender-based violence needs to be a significant aspect of the program. The program has to be particularly about addressing that. So if you are running a program where gender-based violence is one session or one a smaller component of a larger program that might not be eligible. We're looking for programs that are working to end gender-based violence as their primary goal. We're expecting programs that run for at least 10 to 14 weeks per year. So short-term and one-time only programs or workshops are not eligible. We are looking for programs that work with this, that are accessible to the same group of youth who can come back and ask questions, reflect on things, process things, and continue to have a safer or braver space to talk with their peers and with the facilitators. This cycle, we are open to programs running either in school, so during school time, or at lunch, after school, etc., or are community-based. If you look at our evaluation from the last cycle, there was two sort of types of programs that emerged in the fields, which we call universal or selective. So universal programs are those that are delivered to all students in a particular grade or for an entire school, and they're typically mandatory. Selective programs are programs that are delivered to a specific group or community of teens and are typically voluntary. So we would like for you to indicate whether you're intending to be working broadly with an entire community of young people, or whether you will be targeting your program to a specific community. And if that's the case, how are you tailoring that program, or in what ways are you are the young people engaging in the program and being informed or informing its design? We always look for an asset-based positive approach. So, young people are experts in their own lives, and we expect that to be reflected in the programs. And because of that, we also expect teens to be actively involved as leaders in the program, not only in helping design and feeding back on how the program is created, but also how it's led, how it's evaluated, and how they are supported in being leaders in their community. We're also looking for programs that create safer or braver spaces. And this is both during the program time, but also taking into consideration the safety of program participants and staff and facilitators outside of program spaces. So for example, training non-program staff or teachers at schools so that there's a supportive space around the young people in the program. And we're also really interested in facilitation and facilitators. So the best practice of co-facilitating, why or why not is your program addressing that? What is your model of facilitation? Who are your facilitators? How are they reflective of the young people that they are working with? And in what ways are you supporting the retention of facilitators? Because turnover can be really tough on the program and on the participants. There are other criteria for the Teen Healthy Relationships programs that you can find in the guidelines, which include focuses on cyber life, cyber violence, and digital literacy, parent, guardian, and caregiver involvement, and a few other things. So I really encourage you to look at them. The developmental programs, as I said, are for piloting teen healthy relationship programs, and we will accept some research and development time in the granting period. All of the criteria that applies to the teen healthy relationship programs applies to the developmental programs as well, except the minimum program time. So because it's a piloting stage, we will accept a minimum program time of 4 to 6 weeks as opposed to 10 to 14. And that is reflective of the smaller grant size, and also because we understand that there will be some testing. So this new area of work, the national or regional networks, is we will accept any kind of collaboration on local, regional, or national scales. It can be province-wide, it can be multi-province, it can be Southern Alberta, whatever works best for your organization and what you're trying to achieve. We still expect it to have a significant focus on ending gender-based violence with through working with teens and young people, and still involving teens as peer leaders. But the overall hope in this area is to be increasing and strengthening links and relationships between organizations, in the hopes of having some coordination and also some collective action. For those of you who are familiar with the project the foundation has been running for the past 3 years, building the field of teen healthy relationships, there are a number of priority areas identified through that project. And if any of the national or regional networks were addressing those, that would be particularly interesting to the committee. So you can find all of this on our website also, under special projects. But these are the 8 areas that were identified as key priorities for building the field of teen healthy relationships. And so if your national or regional network was addressing one of these or a component of one of these, that would definitely be interesting to the committee and to the foundation for the next 4 years. So getting a little bit into the priorities for the grants, overall for the foundation, we are increasing our focus on the following 4 communities because of gaps in funding overall for these communities, because of a need to reach the underserved and marginalized communities, and also in recognition of the long histories and ongoing effects of colonization, racism, violence, and exclusion. So we in particular invite applications for programs that are working specifically with these communities, and we would expect that the program be designed in collaboration with folks from these communities and young people who would be accessing these programs. In addition, some of the priorities that we are looking for are programs for women, girls, trans, two-spirited, and non-binary peoples who face multiple barriers and are underserved, including those who are living rurally or in northern communities, those living on low incomes, refugee, immigrant, or non-status peoples, etc. And I just want to very quickly point out that the Canadian Women's Foundation takes a broad definition of the term women. So you will see, so if your program is working with trans women, for example, or folks that identify as non-binary or two-spirited, that is still eligible, and we definitely encourage you to apply. I've said it a number of times, but we are looking for projects where participants are leaders, and projects that consider the realities of participants' lives, such as transportation, childcare, and other wraparound services. We are also looking for projects that have established partnerships and grassroots organizations with small budgets, where we can help leverage for other funds. And given that we're the Canadian Women's Foundation, a strong gender analysis is really key, and you will see questions about that in both our letter of intent and full proposal, and we will definitely ask you about how what your program's understanding of gender and gender-based violence is. A couple notes on the administrative side. We will only accept 1 proposal per organization for a grant for these grants. So please don't apply for both a Teen Healthy Relationships program and a national and regional network. We will have to only read and process 1. But that said, if you apply for a Teen Healthy Relationships grant, you're still eligible to apply for other funding streams at the foundation. So I know we've announced a number of upcoming granting areas. So if you apply for a grant, and whether you apply and receive or just apply, you can still apply for our Girls Fund, our Rebuilding Lives, our annual grants, and our investment readiness program, and be eligible. The only caveat to that is that it can't be for the same project. So it would have to, we can't fund the same project under 2 different funding areas. So your Rebuilding Lives and your annual grant would have to be completely different areas, and same for teen. The foundation is also really proud to have funded projects previously under all of our granting areas, but we are only able to fund a small percentage of the total applications we receive. And because of that, we have a policy that if we funded your program for 2 grants in a row, you're not eligible to reapply. So if you have been receiving Teen Healthy Relationships grant funding over our last cycles, please give me a call and we can have a conversation. If you're not sure if you've had grants under the Teen Healthy Relationships stream in the past, please send me an email or give me a call and we can clear that up for you. So a few things that we don't fund. If you have any questions about this, please feel free to email or call. These are things that we are either unable to fund because of CRA rules or don't fall within our mandate. So if your program has a significant portion of any of these, you may not be eligible. So please give us a call. So for process and timing, I'm sure you're all aware now that we're inviting letters of interest that are due on October 21st. The process will be that we will be reviewing these letters of interest over November, end of October and into November, and inviting a shortlist to submit full applications starting at the end of November. So if you are invited, if you're being invited to move on to the next stage, you should hear by November 28th. If you're not being invited to move on to the next stage, you should hear within 4 to 6 weeks with some leeway for December and holidays, but we will definitely let you know as soon as possible. For those that are moving on to the second stage, the full application process, the deadline for that will be January 14th. And we will notify and we will begin reviewing those in January into February. The third stage is a site visit. So those that are shortlisted from the full proposal stage will be invited to have site visits where it will likely be me or someone from the Canadian Women's Foundation, and one of our committee members would like to come and see your space, see how your program works, things that you are difficult to communicate in an application, and a chance for us to meet each other. And then final decisions from the grant selection committee will happen at the beginning of May to go to our board of directors for June. And then in July, all of the grants will be awarded and you'll be notified. I'll take more questions about that at the end, but just to quickly move on into how to make an application. So I've said a couple of times, our grant guidelines, application instructions, and frequently asked questions documents are on our website. Both of the links are here, and I strongly recommend you take a look at them, especially our application instructions, because they have details on what we're looking for each proposal question. So if you're looking at a proposal question and wondering what the best information to put in there is, the application instructions would be a guide for you for that. We're not taking budgets or anything else at this stage. That will be at the full proposal stage, so you don't have to worry about that for right now. I imagine many of you have clicked the link to get an online application started, but just to very quickly clarify, if you click the registration link, or if you click the My Account link, you'll come to this page. If you have never made an application to the Canadian Women's Foundation before, underneath the box where it says email, it says new online applicant. Click that and you can register for an account. If you have made an application to the Canadian Women's Foundation before, still go to the register page and sign in, and that will take you through an eligibility form and the chance to select the Teen Healthy Relationship grants. So the eligibility, quick note on the eligibility form, because the Teen Healthy Relationship grants are focused on teens of all genders, I know that the second question, is your project solely or primarily focused on women, girls, trans, two-spirit, genderqueer, non-binary, and 2S LGBTQI+ people? can be a confusing one, I would click yes for that, even if you are inviting boys as well. So if you're starting a brand new application, still please go through the registration link, click the Teen Healthy Relationships grant at the bottom, and it will take you to the application form. Once you've started a registration, or once you've registered for the Teen Healthy Relationships grants, you can use the My Account link from then on. And when you sign in, it will look like this. So, and this is where you can see your grant in progress, come back and add more information, edit, etc. I also wanted to call your attention to the action bar at the bottom, or at the bottom right. From there, you can either email it to yourself or to somebody else, your application. You can also invite other people to look at it. So if there are other folks in your organization that are either contributing or reviewing for you, you can send them a link to look at it as well. So once you're all signed in, you will see this page, and it will, at the very top of the screen are these 4 purple bars, which you can click through and move around in as however you want. The first tab are questions primarily related to your organization. And if you've made an application to the Canadian Women's Foundation before, some of that will be auto-populated from your previous applications, which you can obviously edit and update as needed, but you won't have to track down. I also, as I said, highly recommend reviewing the grant guidelines and instructions for letters of intent, which are on our website, but also linked here. So please take a look through. At the top, you'll also see the printer-friendly version and email draft links, so you can send this application in progress to yourself or print it out for yourself. And at the bottom of the page, you'll see a save and finish later or next button. So please hit save and finish later when you're done for the day, just to make sure that all your information is still there when you come back. The very last bar, the review my application. So if you can either click review and submit, or click on this top bar, and it will tell you if you've missed any of the required fields. So this, in this example, I missed all of the required fields just so I could take a screenshot. But it will take a look through and tell you if you have any problems that need to be worked out before you can submit. It will also give you an opportunity to review your application one more time, and then hit submit at the bottom. So a few things about how we review applications, and then I'll open it up to questions. So because the Canadian Women's Foundation does our grant making by committee, there are a number of people who will be reading your application. The Teen Healthy Relationships Committee is made up of about 17 people who work in the field, primarily work in the field. Some are donors to the Canadian Women's Foundation, and are from across the country. So we ask you to make it easy for us, because lots of people will be reading it and have different references. We ask that you answer the questions as clearly, intentionally, and completely as possible, using simple language. You can take for granted that the committee members have an understanding of gender-based violence, and why doing teen healthy relationships work is important. So I wouldn't take up a lot of your application time sharing general information about that, and instead spend most of your time talking about your community, why this community, what the need is, and what your experience is in it. As much as possible, talking about ongoing effects and impact that will last beyond the length of the program or the grant will be helpful. And I do recommend, I know that we all write grant proposals last minute because there's so many other things to do, but I do recommend getting someone else to read it if you can, just so that, because I know when I'm writing and have read a document a million times, I start to miss things. You want to have a fresh pair of eyes look at it and make sure that it's super clear, so that when our committee gets it, it's easy for them. In general, I say to folks, the less questions the committee has when they're reading it, the better. If there's a lot of questions, that if your proposal generates more questions for them than answers, it can be tough for them to decide to move it forward. We also recommend taking a look at the Foundation's funding history. We have a list of our current Teen Healthy Relationships grantees up on the website, so you can take a look at who they are and what kind of programs we're currently funding. We also recommend that you highlight your organization's experience and expertise in the field of gender-based violence. What's your organization's philosophy and previous experience with the proposed community? Have you done teen healthy relationships work before? Is it a significant area of work in your organization already? Why or why not? And as much as possible about your organization's ability to carry out the work. In particular, if you're looking for, if this grant is only going to be covering a partial amount of the program, how will you be adjusting the program if you don't get your money from your other sources? So a quick note that the foundation doesn't give partial grants. If we can't fund an organization at the proposal amount that they asked for, then we won't fund it. We don't think it's fair to cut down a budget and ask for the same program. So this question is about what happens if your other funders don't come through, and how would you make sure that the program still happens, or what would you do to adjust? So what we're looking for more than anything is for you to communicate the context of your work. Why is this project needed where you are? Have you done a community needs assessment? Why is now the important time? What is going on in your community, in your organization that may impact this? How is it relevant to the teens in your area? How are you going to be doing outreach and recruitment? What will be the challenges for that? And you know, what other supports and services are you able to connect your participants with? We want to know about your program, but also the environment that your program is operating in. And in order to, we can't be in all places, so please be as descriptive as possible about where you are, what's going on, what's the context in this particular moment. And then finally, if you're going to be working with project partners, we would love for them to be aware of the fact that you have named them. So if you could talk a little bit about, or if your project partners will be asked to weigh in for sure at the full proposal stage. But if you're naming project partners in your letter of intent stage, we expect them to be partners that are key to the program and are aware that they are going to be part of this program. We also are interested in experience of monitoring and documenting learnings and an openness to learning as an organization. And we're looking for projects that obviously are aligned with our criteria and with the Canadian Women's Foundation overall mission and vision. So if you have any questions, please feel free to email or call us. We're happy to talk over your proposal and see if it fits, or if there's another angle you could take, or if potentially there's another grant that it might fit better under. So some of the things that are that we can't accept in a proposal or will impact your proposal negatively when the committee reads it are things that, such as if they don't fit into the mandate of the foundation, so if they're not specifically about preventing gender-based violence, or gender equity overall, it likely wouldn't be a good match for us. We will, if you are recycling a proposal you've sent to us before but haven't updated it to 2019, that's tough, especially for our committee members, because they can't read between the lines. They don't necessarily know every organization. Obviously, incomplete applications or ones submitted after the deadline aren't eligible. We're on a relatively tight deadline, or timeline, so unfortunately, if you can't make the October 21st deadline, we probably won't be able to accept your proposal, barring crazy snowstorms and things like that. Obviously, weather in Canada can be a barrier at times, but for the most part, we aren't able to accept after the deadline. So I just wanted to give a quick thank you to our funding partners and all the donors to the Canadian Women's Foundation Violence Prevention Fund who make it possible for us to have these grants. We couldn't do this without these folks, and so I have to give the shout out for sure. And as I've said a few times, if you have questions, please contact us. I'm Keetha Mercer, the program manager here or one of the program managers here at the Canadian Women's Foundation. My focus is on the Teen Healthy Relationships grants. And then your other point of contact is Rivka Kalalea, who's an administrator here at the Canadian Women's Foundation. And her job is to, part of her job is to work through all these, the grants administration. So the two of us would be more than happy to answer your questions about Teen Healthy Relationships grants and other grants more generally. So we have about 20 minutes for any questions. As I said, if you have a mic and would like to ask them out loud, just hit the hand button and we will unmute you so you can ask. We would love to hear your voice, so please don't be shy. If you don't have a mic or don't want to speak openly to a bunch of people you don't know, feel free to put it in the questions box and either Rivka or Jackie or I will read them out loud.
Hey, Keetha, can you hear me now?
Nope, can't hear you.
Okay, because the audience seems to be able to hear me. Mercer had a question. Could you give us an example of an acceptable activity under the national or regional network stream? What would that project look like?
Sorry, can you ask that one more time?
You bet. Could you give us an example of an acceptable activity under the national or regional network stream? What would that project look like?
Thanks for that question. So this is a new area for us. So we are open to proposals of almost any kind, as long as it's focused on capacity building, learning, and collective action involving people who work in the field of teen healthy relationships. So I highly recommend looking at our Building the Field work. We have done a lot of national level work on that and are interested in funding other networks and getting built. So, but as I said, we've never funded this before for teen healthy relationships, so we're open to almost anything. This is a pilot for us.
I've got another question for us. It specifically asks about the mandate and annual operating budget. Are we supposed to only include what we do with funds awarded, or also include funds that the supposed program already has within the letter of intent?
So the mandate and annual operating budget are for the organization that will be hosting this program. So it will be the annual operating budget would be the total annual operating budget for your organization.
And then Keetha, there were some other questions that I had answered throughout the webinar, and I'm wondering if we want to read some of those out. I've sent the answers to everybody, so they should have them.
Sure, why not?
Okay, there was a question about the clarification on the 2 of 4-year funding availability. The grants are being offered from 2020 to 2024, but projects are only eligible for 2 rounds of funding. So the same project, sorry, I just lost it. I think they were thinking that 2020 to 2024, that 2 years of that. Could you just clarify that 2 rounds meaning, yeah.
Yeah. So by rounds, we mean a full 4-year cycle. So 2020 to 2024 is 1 grant. We have organizations that have been funded by us previously. So in our 2013 to 2017 cycle, or in our 2006 to 2010, 2011 cycle. So those would be the ones that I'm talking about more specifically. If you get approved for a grant in 2020, you will have that grant through to 2024.
And then there was another question about a bit more detail on what our definition of gender analysis is. I attached the definition from the instructions, but I don't know if you want to provide a little more detail about that.
Sure. Yeah, we're looking for programs that are aware and integrate intersectional feminism into their programming. So our gender analysis is that we are aware that women and girls, trans, non-binary, two-spirited, and two-spirited folks as well, experience violence and inequity at greater scales than general population or men. So in the teen healthy relationships granting area, we expect that to be an aspect of the programming. Gender stereotypes, toxic masculinity, things like that would be aspects of how this would play out from a gender analysis perspective. I say intersectional because we are also looking for programs that are clear that intersecting identities will impact violence and inequity in different ways. So if your program is working specifically with First Nations, Métis, and Inuit youth, we would hope that the missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls report and calls to action were something that you had considered or were considering or were implementing, for example. So I hope that's helpful. If you have more questions, we can always email or talk about it.
Okay, we've got some more new questions. One of the criteria is to have the activities available 10 to 14 weeks minimum per year during the project, but it also states that they need to be accessible to the same people. Does that mean that it has to address the same teens during the 4 years or the same partners? Please add precisions.
So it doesn't have to be the same teens over all 4 years, but it needs to be available to the same teens for that 1 year. So if you are running a program for 12 weeks, that's once a week for an hour, for example, we would expect that the same group of teens can come back each week. Obviously, not every teen will come to every session, but we are not interested in programs that do one-off workshops because our research shows that young people need a little bit more time to process it and need to be able to come back, ask questions, continue to learn.
Great. And then we have a question about networks. Would a city-based network be eligible for the network grants, or would it need to involve multiple cities?
City-based networks would be eligible. Yeah, city-based networks are eligible. I'd be very interested in hearing the case for that.
Okay. Would a project focusing on non-binary youth be eligible for this grant?
Yes, absolutely. Non-binary youth are one of our primary focus areas as a foundation, or non-binary people, trans, two-spirited, non-binary people are one of our primary focuses. So if your project is working exclusively with non-binary youth on healthy relationships, we would be very happy to see an application.
And then we have, can we run the program more than once in a year in 10 to 14 week segments? As well, can we run concurrent programs?
Yes, absolutely. The 10 to 14 week is a minimum. If you'd like to do more, we would be absolutely happy to hear about that. Have an application for me.
Keetha Nader has a hand up.
All right.
Oh, I think we lost him.
Oh.
While Nader comes back or writes their question in a box, I've got a couple more. Is there a minimum number of participants you would need to serve?
No, we don't have any criteria requiring a certain number of participants. These programs are not meant to, are like, don't have to be reaching a super wide audience. Obviously, if there's, you know, if your program was only reaching 2 people a year and another program was reaching 30, the other program might get prioritized over yours, but reaching 30 over reaching 100 is not necessarily a big difference.
Okay, and then does gender-based violence refer specifically to physical violence?
No. The Canadian Women's Foundation's definition of violence includes physical, sexual, emotional or verbal, spiritual, financial, and harassment or stalking. So gender-based violence is wide.
Good. I think we have Nader back, so I'm going to try to unmute. Go ahead.
Hi, I wanted to look at the actual budget. If the organization already has funds allocated towards a specific program, does that mean that that we, for the budget, we're only giving out like the amount allotted for the program?
So we're not asking for a budget at this point. So I wouldn't. You don't have to give me a detailed budget or to give us a detailed budget for the committee. If your organization has funding for the program, and this grant is to add an additional component or be a one grant amongst many to fund the program, that's totally fine. In our next stage, we will ask for a full budget. So in the full proposal stage, we'll ask for a full budget over the 4 years, and there will be columns that say, what part is being funded by your other funders, what part is being funded by this particular grant, and what part is in kind from your organization. So we understand that these programs can sometimes take a lot of money and that there will be multiple funders involved, and that is totally fine. But if you ask for $38,000 from us, we will give you $38,000 if we approve you. We don't give partial funding. Does that answer your question?
So just for the actual letter of intent, we're not giving a full budget. We're giving just an overview of what we would do with the funds.
Yes. So for the letter of intent, all we ask for is how much money you will be requesting under this grant. So if you're requesting the full 40,000, you just have to write 40,000. For the letter of intent, we won't be getting into the details of what you'll be spending the money on. Like how much is going to admin, how much is going to facilitators, et cetera, et cetera. That will be in the next stage.
Okay.
And then Keetha, I have one final question, or right now I have one final question. 10 to 14 continuous weeks, or can it be once every 2 weeks for 20 weeks and still count?
Yes, once every 2 weeks is fine. It doesn't have to be once a week for 10 to 14 continuous weeks. It just needs to be a regular program that is at least 10 to 14 weeks. Okay. Any other questions coming in?
Hold on, Keetha. Emily is asking if you can repeat that last answer about the continuous.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Okay, so yes, a program that runs once every 2 weeks for 20 weeks is absolutely eligible. It doesn't have to be every single week. It just needs to be at least 10 weeks. So I know for some organizations who that work rurally, bringing young people together can be a little bit more of a challenge. So we will be we're open to variations, but it needs to be the young people need to be able to access that program at least 10 times.
Okay, we've got, thanks for a great presentation. You're welcome. We haven't done a needs assessment yet. We would be doing a developmental program, so we were wondering if it can state our intent to assess needs as part of the development.
Yes, absolutely. We don't require a needs assessment in any case. Just if you've done one, that's great, and we would love to see it. But if overall we're just looking for a statement of need in the community and how you know that. If you're applying for a developmental program, we expect the beginning of the grant to be research and development, and if a needs assessment is part of that, that's great. We would be happy to see that. Okay, we have 5 minutes left. I'm happy to stay here if any more questions come in, but I don't have anything else to say. So if folks are having more questions, feel free to put them in. I'll be here and I'll answer them. But if not, I thank you all for attending. I appreciate you coming to the webinar. And like I said, if you have any additional questions or anything that comes up, feel free to give me a call or an email or Rivka. We're having another webinar on Tuesday, October 15th. So if you have more questions, then feel free to join. I think that one's not full yet. The info for registering for that is on our website on the Teen Health Relationships Grant page. So thank you all. We will post this recording to our YouTube page and send it out to all of the attendees. Feel free to share it and go check back. And looking forward to reading your proposals.